Please subscribe to this channel for more videos related to Catholic Christian teaching. The Council of Trent teaches, since all men had lost their innocence in Adam's sin, being made unclean, and by nature children of wrath, so completely were they the slaves of sin and under the power of the devil and death, that not only the Gentiles by means of the power of nature, but even the Jews by means of the letter of the law of Moses, were unable to liberate themselves and rise from that state. Only through a free act of divine love could the order of the supernatural, destroyed by sin, be restored. This dogma is contradicted by Pelagianism, which attributed the power of self-redemption to free will, and by modern rationalism with its various theories of self-redemption. Pelagianism is a 5th century Christian theological view named after Pelagius that denies original sin, teaching humans are born morally neutral and capable of achieving perfection and salvation through their own free will, with divine grace acting as a helpful guide, not a necessity. Modern rationalism views redemption not as salvation from sin, but as self-improvement through reason, autonomy, and human effort. It claims that redemption is human, not transcendent. It rejects the need for divine grace. Humanity is not seen as fallen in the theological sense, but as ignorant, underdeveloped, and constrained by bad systems. What needs saving is not the soul, but behavior, psychology, or society. Redemption comes through education, science, therapy, technology, and political reform. In his epistle to the Romans, St. Paul teaches that all men, Jews and Gentiles, stand under the curse of sin, and that they are justified by a free gift of the divine love in virtue of the redemption. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified freely by His grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. The patristic teaching is expressed in the words of St. Augustine. They can sell themselves but cannot redeem themselves. The intrinsic reason for the absolute necessity of redemption for fallen men lies, on the one hand, in the infinity of man's guilt, and on the other hand, in the absolute supernaturalness of the state of grace. As a deed of creature, sin is indeed finite, but as insult to the infinite God, it is infinite, and accordingly demands an atonement of infinite value. But a mere man cannot supply such an atonement. Redemption is an entirely free deed of divine love and divine mercy. Since even the elevation of man into the supernatural state is a free gift of divine love, then all the freer is the restoration of the supernatural unity with God, which was destroyed by mortal sin. The Apostle Paul begins the epistle to the Ephesians with a eulogy on the grace of God, which so magnificently manifests itself in the redemption through Jesus Christ. He designates the redemption as a mystery of the divine will, which he has made known to us according to his good pleasure. The view of St. Athanasius that God's honor demanded the redemption is to be understood as a high appropriateness, since elsewhere he decisively stresses the gratuitous nature of the redemption. St. Anselm of Canterbury teaches that God was constrained to redeem us by reason of the immutability of his decree of blessedness for man. He held that when God, in spite of his foreknowledge of sin, resolved from all eternity to create man and to bless him, there followed from this free divine resolve a necessity to redeem mankind. Sententia certa refers to a teaching that is not a formally defined dogma, but is considered certainly true because it is a logical conclusion derived from revealed truths or is intrinsically linked to divine revelation, making its denial incompatible with faith. It is a high level of certainty, below de fide, but above common teaching, with examples include humanity from one pair of ancestors, or the certainty that God can create intellectual beings. St. Thomas, like St. Augustine, teaches against St. Anselm of Canterbury that God, through his omnipotence, could have redeemed mankind in many other ways. It would be undue limitation of the divine omnipotence, wisdom and mercy, if the Incarnation were to be represented as the sole means of redemption. God can, without inquiry to his justice, bestow forgiveness and grace on the repentant sinner, even with an inadequate atonement or any atonement. Sententia communis refers to doctrines or beliefs widely accepted and held in common by theologians, even though they have not been formally defined as dogma by the Church's teaching authority. These are well supported, generally agreed upon teachings, often derived from revelation through reasoning, but technically considered free opinions, with examples including the belief that the saints in heaven can intercede for souls in purgatory. The infinite insults to God inherent in mortal sin can be fully counterbalanced by an infinite act of atonement only. None but a divine person can perform such an atonement. To this extent, a hypothetical necessity of the incarnation can be maintained. In a wider sense, one can also speak of a necessity of congruence, insofar as the incarnation of a divine person was the most appropriate means of redemption, because it most gloriously reveals the perfections of God and gives the strongest motives to the striving of mankind for religious and moral perfection. Please go to YouTube Retirementality channel, playlist Doctrine of Jesus Christ the Redeemer for the complete series of these materials.